let me ask you something. What if the biggest threat to your soul wasn't some ancient, far-off evil, but something you hold in your hand every single day? Today, we are going to unpack a really powerful sermon from Pastor Jericho Neither that digs into the hidden spiritual costs of our digital world. He argues that there's an ancient drama playing out right on our modern screens.
So, the sermon kicks off with this quote, and it is absolutely gut-wrenching. It comes from January 2025, after a huge influencer, we're talking 47 million followers, told everyone she was taking a social media break. And this was a fan's response. It's not just sadness, right? It's a full-blown identity crisis, a feeling of being completely and totally lost without this person on their screen.
And this wasn't just one person feeling this way. The scale of this devotion was just staggering. In only a few hours, the hashtag #ComebackQueen absolutely exploded with over 2 billion views. 2 billion! The sermon uses this number to make a really important point. This goes way beyond a simple fan base. This is a global outpouring of something that looks, for all the world, like worship. And here it is. This is the central idea of the whole thing. The sermon argues that when your very sense of self gets tied up in the presence of an online figure, it's not just fandom anymore. It's become a modern form of devotion. It's like our phones have become the sanctuary, our feeds are the holy texts, and our attention has become the sacrifice at this new altar of attention. Okay, so to really understand what's happening today, the sermon reaches back to a very ancient concept, idolatry. But it's probably not what you're thinking. This isn't about old dusty statues or golden calves. It's about something much, much closer to home.
So the sermon does something brilliant here. It completely redefines idolatry for our digital age. It basically says that idolatry is just misplacing our ultimate praise, our time, and even our identity. It's what happens when we give our deepest devotion to created things, like the pixels on a screen, an algorithm, or a carefully crafted online personality, instead of giving it to the one who created everything in the first place. And wow, this slide just lays out the difference perfectly. The modern idol, the influencer, is fundamentally insecure, right? They need your likes, your views, your engagement just to exist. They depend on you. The sermon contrasts this with the creator, using this deep theological term aseity, which basically just means to exist in and of oneself. We're talking about a being who is completely self-existent, totally secure, and whose love for you isn't some kind of transaction. So, if our attention is a currency, a form of money that we're spending every day, what's the actual cost? And what's really fascinating is how the sermon frames this whole problem. It's less about religious language and more about the language of the marketplace, business, economics, and return on investment. This is the verse right at the heart of the sermon's audit. But it's not presented as some dusty old warning. No, it's framed as the ultimate ROI question. It's a spiritual cost-benefit analysis. I mean, what's the net profit if you manage to get everything this world says is valuable, but in the process you lose the very core of who you are? Let's break down the actual language here because it is so specific. The sermon points out that the original Greek word for gain is kerdino. And get this wasn't a spiritual word. It was a commercial term. It means to profit, to acquire, to win in the marketplace. It's all about getting ahead. Now, let's look at the other side of the ledger. The word for forfeit is zemio. And again, it's a commercial term. This doesn't just mean you misplaced something. It means to suffer a damaging, injurious loss in a bad transaction. It's a deal that leaves you fundamentally broken. And finally, we have the word for exchange, antilogma, which literally means the price of a swap, a substitution. So the question becomes crystal clear, doesn't it? What are you willing to trade for your soul? What's its buyout price? This brings us right to the heart of the transaction itself. What exactly is this soul that's on the trading block? I mean, what is actually being lost when we make this great exchange of our attention and our devotion? The sermon makes it really clear that the Greek word psyche, or soul, isn't just about our feelings. It is your entire being, your consciousness, your mind, your will, your personality, your eternal identity. It is the irreducible, essential you. And that is what's at stake in this whole deal. And to make this really concrete, the sermon offers up this data. The average American spends 7 hours a day devoted to their screens, but only 7 minutes a day in prayer. That's not just a statistic, it's a spiritual audit of our daily lives.
And those numbers, they tell a pretty startling story about where our worship truly lies.
And you know, as the sermon points out, this is not a new problem. This verse from Romans, it's like a 2,000-year-old diagnosis for our exact moment right now. It describes this timeless human tendency to trade the infinite, eternal creator for the finite, fleeting thing that was created.
But this explainer isn't just about a diagnosis, and that's the good news. The sermon is very clear about offering more than just a critique. It gives us a clear, practical, and really hopeful path forward for anyone who feels like something is, well, out of balance in their own life.
And here is that path, laid out in 3 really direct steps. First, you do an honest audit. Where does your attention really go? Second, you fast from the false worship. You take a deliberate break from social media and just see how it feels. And third, you return to the Word. You intentionally replace that screen time with time in Scripture. Now, this next point is absolutely crucial. This is how the sermon concludes. It doesn't end with a message of guilt or shame over our screen time. Not at all. It ends with this incredibly powerful message of grace. For anyone who wants to reorient their life, the invitation is one of freedom, not condemnation. And so the sermon leaves us with this one final echoing question. In a world that is just crowded with digital deities, all of them competing for our worship, the question Jesus asked 2,000 years ago in a place that was filled with idols is just as relevant, maybe even more so, today. So if this discussion resonated with you at all, and you're maybe looking for more resources to help navigate these kinds of challenges, you can connect with the pastor from this sermon, Jericho Neither, who also goes by Pastor Jay. He and his ministry, Believers Faith Worldwide, are on TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, sharing more teachings just like this one. You can also find some really powerful and inspirational music and podcasts on their SoundCloud, or you can always just reach out directly through email.